I was going to sing I Can Feel It Coming in the Air Tonight. I was about to start singing because I thought I was in my shower for a second, but I'm not, so I'm not going to do that. Great, and all with tequila.
And James Blunt actually went to my school, so we were singing mates.
I feel like you might need to then duet James Blunt and sing Beautiful. Hi, I'm Lisa, and welcome to the Superist podcast, where we talk about what's hot and what's not in the world of Web3. Now, as a massive user of this platform when I was young, and I don't want to date myself, but I am showing my age, I am super excited for this next guest. Okay, I'm going to try and pronounce his name right. I've been practicing for a few days. So he is the newly appointed CEO of Napster. Welcome to the show, John Vlassopulos.
Said so well.
Was that right?
Nicely done. Nicely done.
Oh, panicky. I can't reveal your Telegram name, but I won't reveal it, but it is the coolest Telegram name I've ever heard. And I feel bad that I've said that because I can't say what it is because I don't want you to get all this spam. But well done on the Telegram handle choice.
Relatively new to Telegram as a primary, and it seemed I didn't realize you could do the handle. So going around the event this week in Singapore, it was quite handy to just kind of shout out the handle, and people are like, "Oh, it works!" And so yeah, it's been fun. And I like when you say Napster with the Australian accent; it sounds cool.
No. Is there an actual correct way to pronounce it?
Not at all. Not at all. I think it's the ER, right? Napster and Napster. It's,
yes.
We like it. Anyway, lovely to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Well, for those people who are just listening as a podcast, John's got what we might say a vintage Napster t-shirt on, which is you telling me it's from 21 years ago, and it looks like it's in very good nick, but hopefully they give you a new one.
It will be me in terms of, we haven't done merch for the company for a long time. So yeah, this is probably from 2000, 2001 era. It has gone through many house moves, and went through a few girlfriends going, "You don't need all those band t-shirts and all those like company t-shirts." It's like, no, and then my wife, and it's like, no, I feel I have a need for this one. This one's like a precious one. So when I was initially talking to the investors, I like brought it out for the first call, and they were like, "No way!" It's like anyway. So it's come full circle.
You know, it's one of those brands that I feel that if you were like me and you grew up in the dark ages of dial-up and you're using things like Napster and LimeWire and ICQ and MSN, it's so nostalgic, and it's got such a, I don't know, for me, I was like, Napster. And when I saw the announcement about you being announced, I was like, Napster, that's like such a blast from the past. But the interesting thing that, and I was doing a bit of a deep dive into your history, but you were actually involved with the company years ago. So this isn't just you coming into Napster, now to help steer it into Web3. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved with the company all those years ago?
With the music industry, sometimes you get sucked in and then you try and get away and then you get pulled back in again like a vortex. So I started my career in music in the 90s, actually in Asia. So I used to work for BMG in our regional office in Hong Kong, and we moved to Tokyo. And then after that, I went to New York. So we were looking at new ways that the internet could help artists. And then this company, Napster, came along. So I then worked for the parent company, Bertelsmann, parent company of BMG, and a small team of us. Actually, one of the other team is here in Singapore. So we had drinks last night, which was very bringing back the old days. And then there was we lent them $50 million. And then we had this $1 billion offer to the music industry to try and legitimize what was the old Napster. And we were creating a kind of Napster 2.0 back then with a bunch of different companies that we were going to package in with commerce and contextual media and concert tickets. And it was super cool with this community. And actually another company, kick.com, the guy Tak lives in Singapore. We also had drinks last night. So it's been a whole full circle in Singapore. So we very nearly, it was $1 billion we negotiated for a week, nearly got it legitimate. But I think at that time, the music industry was not quite ready. But the product that we had, the 2.0, still kind of lodged in my mind, was the best product I'd seen even many years since. And one of my colleagues went off to this little company, Apple, and he's been there for 19 years. So he runs Apple Music out of the States. So it birthed a lot of the new businesses and kind of took the industry dramatically from physical to digital. But the key part, I think, I was at the Token event the other day, And it was like, who used Napster back in the day? And I was like, oh, we used Napster. And it was like, you're naughty. And it was like, yeah, we're rebels. It was weirdly a Web3 brand. It feels almost before Web3 was a glint in anyone's eyes, because it was counterculture and everyone was doing it together. It was like a real community mission. And you could chat to people, and it was very identifying, I think, at the time, because not many people do anything vaguely naughty, and that wasn't really that naughty, but it was just connecting with music in a visceral way and your friends. So yeah, we reached, I think, 60, 70 million people at the time. So the recall this week wearing the t-shirt, I got lots of whoops and people wanted to take pictures. So I think the brand is still strong.
The brand is actually, can I say, the brand is surprisingly strong, given it, and I actually didn't even realize it's like been operating as a legitimate streaming service since 2003. So it's still around, but for a brand that's like, I don't want to say it's under the radar. It's like definitely been out there, but I wouldn't say as out there as it was back then. Why do you think it's been like, it's such a strong brand? It's crazy.
Again, I think the services that came since, I mean, New Napster almost included it, went on top of this service called Rhapsody, which was actually the original music service back in 2001 that had the first $9.99 service and offering. So it became a brand on top of that. So we've paid billions of dollars to the music industry over the last number of years. So I think streaming music just became more of a commodity where people, can access. Back in the day when I launched music services, 1 million tracks, and it was 10 million tracks, and then 50 million tracks. We now have 100 million tracks. Most people only listen to, 2,000 or 3,000 tracks. But it was always this push for larger and larger selection of commodity access and not necessarily a community. So I think Napster, the original Napster, was this community. It actually stood for something. People were doing it together. So I think since then, a music service has more just been something you get when you want to listen to your favorite band, and you punch it in, and it has less, kind of soul and association. So I think now Napster, the new Napster or the current Napster, hasn't done press really. It's just been running along as a successful independent streaming service for the number of years. So we haven't dialed it up. So dialing it up again, some people are like, oh, Napster's back, and some people are like, so so it hasn't been in the press for a long time. So this rebirth has been great, because now people are all excited again. So we're looking to continue that momentum.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to delve a little bit deeper into that in the interview, but I wanted to actually start off before we delve too far down your rabbit hole. I want to start off with some icebreaker questions, because I really like to get to know our guests. And I actually know that you started your career as a DJ. So I do want to know, what was your DJ name? And is it like as embarrassing as your first email?
Yeah, I saw your questions and deliberately didn't prepare because I thought it'd be more fun to do it on the fly. So let's go. So my original DJ name, it was kind of a random occurrence. So I was studying in Beijing. Actually, I studied Chinese and economics from undergrad. And so I took my decks out to Beijing where I was studying. And it was really just, I bought some decks before I left, and I was kind of more bedroom DJ and wasn't really ready for any kind of a prime time. And I was in a kind of a club in the embassy area of Beijing. There wasn't many clubs at the time. This is the early 90s. And my Irish friend was chatting to the owners of the club, and he was like, your DJ is no good. My friend John could be a better DJ. And the guys were like, okay, how about Friday? So it was quite a frightening week where I went from kind of messing around in effectively my dorm room. And then on that next Friday night, I was up on the crow's nest with my decks and 300 people, and then had to start being a DJ. So I was very unelegantly titled DJ John from London. And then that said, it was not very, but there weren't, I think I was one of the first foreign DJs in China, at the time. So I went on to do my thesis on the emancipation of youth through entertainment in Greater China, effectively the club scene in China in the early 90s. And that's led me into a job with EMI and then to BMG. So it kind of got me into the music industry.
Amazing. So DJ John from London, if you ever get sick of Napster, maybe you can start the DJ circuit again. But maybe we can work on your name.
I'm open to creative. You've been good with your creative suggestions on branding, so maybe I'll take my mysterious Telegram handle that we're not revealing. That would be a better one.
Yeah, I agree. Well, actually, on that note, what's the song that always gets people onto the dance floor as a DJ?
Back then, I was playing to a very global crowd. So there could be Africans and Swedes and Chinese and Japanese, or a mixture of foreign students and local people. I'd say now, doing garden parties, any Anderson .Paak track, like Come Down, I think is a
Yep.
definite. That's a definite get people on the dance floor, even if they're not ready to dance. They just, you can't help but move. It's just such a great track.
Fantastic. I won't make you sing or hum that, so don't worry. Now, I'd love to know, and maybe when we catch up in person, we can do this, but what's your go-to karaoke song?
I went to college during, I think what internationally they call the Britpop era. So for me, it's always Wonderwall by Oasis.
That is a great call. Love that. Love that. Massive Oasis fan. I think I did when I was at school, we had to do like analysis of a lyric, like a lyrics of a song. And I did Don't Look Back in Anger by Oasis. So, I mean, I think those lyrics really speak for themselves, to be honest, looking back now. Very obvious, but yep, big Oasis fan. What was the first tape or CD that you bought?
I think I might have even gone beyond tape or CD. I think that's a question to like vinyl. So I think it was maybe like I think it was probably a 7-inch. I think it was probably an early Genesis track. I would say maybe like around somewhere, something off Invisible Touch, maybe that record.
Amazing, because that's like Phil Collins, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
I remember actually listening to I'm not going to sing. I was going to sing I Can Feel It Coming in the Air Tonight. I was about to start singing because I thought I was in my shower for a second, but I'm not, so I'm not going to do that. But the drum on that, on vinyl, like I used to listen to on my dad's record player, like hard to beat. Very, very good song. Very good song.
There you go. What else you got?
Great choice. Okay, if you had to perform a duet with any artist, living or past, who would it be and what would you sing?
Presumption that I should be duetting when with any artist. I did actually at my school. I did sing the New Boys solo. So when I was a little wee snapper at school, so I could sing for a minute, and then and James Blunt actually went to my school, so we were singing mates.
I feel like you might need to then duet James Blunt and sing Beautiful.
Just to really excite all of my friends, I would do a duet with James Blunt singing "You're Beautiful." There you go. You nailed it.
Yeah, you're beautiful.
Just like old times. Just like old times.
Old times. And just to finish up, now I did a little bit of stalking on your LinkedIn, and I've already seen some cool photos of your parties. So I'd be interested to know who the coolest person you partied with. We're not going to ask you to reveal details of what happened at those parties, but
I mean, maybe on the LinkedIn, I think the only one public there was like Little Nas X. He's definitely fun. So that night was at the Grammys. It was Doja Cat, Little Nas X, and there was a little bit of tequila. And another fun night was Anderson .Paak in Hollywood, also with tequila. So they are super. I'm a huge Paak fan. I mean, his whole story about how his voice initially, he was more of a Justin Timberlake pop guy, and then he had issues with his voice that made him have that growly, sort of sound. And he thought his career was over, and then he kind of embraced it, and he's become, the Paak that we know today. So he's super funny guy, and just I think he's incredibly talented. Everything he does. So Paak in Hollywood, and then Nas at the Grammys.
Great, and all with tequila. That's the common denominator. So
I mean, I was just obviously observing the entertainment.
Well, actually, interestingly, on the topic of Little Nas X, you were at Roblox prior to joining Napster. So you were the vice president and global head of music at Roblox. And I know you did some amazing, amazing events in Roblox, like pretty much like, I guess, how we think of digital worlds or the metaverse. So can you tell us a little bit about your role at Roblox and how you really pioneered that aspect of entertainment, and even just giving consumers a new way to experience their favorite artists, which I think ties really nicely into your role at Napster?
So we had a similar, I think where Web3 music is now, we were there 3-4 years ago with music in the metaverse. So my role was to try and tell a story around Roblox, which was conceived as a metaverse, not the metaverse, but shepherding it in, where millions of people came together to play and build games and hang out together. The founder wanted to tell the story kind of beyond games. So music seemed to me like a natural area with concerts. So a lot of the music industry has been siloed, where you go to see shows over here, and then over here you stream your music, and over here you buy merch. So it felt like with a community as big as Roblox, everyone's coming out to hang out, that concerts versus just streaming music was a more relevant sort of metaphor for the community. So I thought, right, we will do concerts, but I wasn't exactly sure how we. So I think, at least in Web3 music, which we'll come to, there are signs of innovation and business models. Back then in the music of the metaverse, it was pretty cold start. So initially we had to kind of talk internally and see how technically we could do it as a platform, because we'd never really done anything that would have that much volume and concurrent users at the same time. So we needed to make sure that the platform wasn't going to break. So there was a lot of internal work, and then it was sort of conceiving what it would look like on the platform. Would it, be forever, and what would the songs, be like? Would there be backdrops, and what would the world be, and would there be engagement and games? So we started working on all that with some colleagues at the company, and then it was like, well, who should be the star? And Little Nas X was coming off. We had a survey in the company, and he was kind of top of the list of an artist that the community enjoyed, coming off his kind of meme 2019 era with Old Town Road. So reached out to friends at Sony and got in touch with management and kind of started the ball rolling. And initially they were like, why would he do a virtual concert? Like, that doesn't make sense. And then we sort of explained the community and how he, would really connect, and they wanted to not just watch it, they wanted to kind of experience it and run around in the music video. And they go, oh, running around the music video, I get it. So we talked about these different metaphors, not being able to show it. And I think Nas was sold. I said, look, go talk to, he wasn't on Roblox. It was a little below. He was like a meme guy, not quite Roblox, but I said, go talk to your cousins. So he came back and he goes, oh, I talked to my cousins, man. It would be so cool if Uncle Nas did the Roblox show. So we got him bought in, label bought in, and had to create whole new contracts for everything. And then we didn't have a production company to build it, because there wasn't like an industry for building metaverse concerts. So found an old friend from the games and VFX industry and said, we need you to build a company on the fly. So you're going to build a company on the fly to support it. And it all then internally, probably worked with 80 different colleagues across the company. We kind of all little mavericks got together as this kind of renegade project, and just about landed the plane. It was a little coming in. There was definitely some wobbly wings, but when it landed, I think that Dave was like, that was what I was talking about, and then he was able to have that as a reference for the market. The music industry had the sort of lighthouse example to go, oh, we had 40 million people coming together. Nas made a bunch of money, off virtual merch, which is kind of equivalent to, if it was a Web3 world, NFTs, although it was our own ecosystem. And then the community loved it, and it was this new thing that hadn't been done before. So we were kind of taking music and extending it, and giving artists a new way to be creative and connect with their fans, and giving fans a new way to connect with their artists. So it was really this centering around fandom. And then we kind of blew it up from there with more concerts and launch parties and listening events, and then rolling out brand-funded events with Samsung and Charlie XCX and Logitech and Lizzo. And then it kind of led to the virtual worlds with Spotify's and iHeart's. So that was the journey, but it was definitely a cold start. So some of that playbook is now obviously applicable to the things we're looking at doing in Web3.
That's exciting. And I feel that and this is something that I've noticed throughout your career, you're always at the forefront of technology. And that can be sometimes a scary place to be, because, when you're going in to be pitching to, say, one of like the biggest up and coming artists in the world, or one of the most talked about, like, how do you almost convince him of a vision when there's nothing to show? That, like you said, there's no playbook for a lot of these things. And as you go into Web3, like what we're finding as well is like there's literally nothing to refer to. There's no example of like this being done successfully before / being done at all. So how do you actually, and how have you done that throughout your career, convince people that this is the future, they need to jump on board? Because I feel like that's going to be one of the challenges with Web3, and something that we're finding as well. It's just getting people to understand, like, you need to jump on this. Like, this is what everyone's going to be doing.
I think I want to retire as a behavioral economist, right? So I'm always fascinated with why we do what we do and how we interact and what triggers, what are all of our triggers. So I think, having worked across different industries, I've been a TV producer and worked in advertising and media and for a tech company, gaming company. So I think a lot of the time the models are already existing. They're just maybe not in the area that you're used to working. So you can pull from, I think a lot of the inspiration for the virtual concerts on Roblox came from when I was a TV producer. So we produced a lot of interactive shows. So that interactivity that I'd seen was definitely more of a TV type experience in terms of how we programmed it and how we did the live. Because the live ones we did Deal or No Deal, where you could vote, and we also had concurrence, and we were going to break the carrier networks. There was like different different aspects of the career that came together. And then I needed a way to offset the cost of the events. So that was more when I was had an agency like branded content. So then the brands would come in and offset the cost because they wanted to align with the artists and reach them. So it's kind of like pulling, I think, from different areas of media and advertising that I worked in tech. And then you can kind of see maybe it's not exactly in that industry, but you can kind of piece together how it might work or could work more effectively. And I think the key thing is always being obsessed with the fan. So if you think about the music industry, it's been structured more around the business model and less around the fan. So I went to see the script the other night in Singapore, and there were 7,000 fans, screaming at the indoor stadium, and they paid maybe $150, $200 for the ticket. And when they left, they got nothing, right? So there's no, it's always been live over here, maybe merch over here, some streaming over here. So the natural thing that I think was, the success at Roblox was just centering around that fan experience. What would the fan want? Not how is the industry structured and how can the fan kind of squeeze into that? It's like focusing around the fan and the artist and that notion of fandom. And I think that's what makes music exciting as an area, because our passion, as we're kids, is like how we connect with the world, how we express ourselves, what clothes we wear, who we hang out with. Our first concert that you didn't ask me is very telling, right? And all these different things. It's our tribe and how we connect. So I think the social side of music, which has been left out, that you see in the live space when you go to a band and a club or a festival, that has always been missing in the streaming world. So I think, anyway, moving forward, a lot of the things you'll see us doing are kind of pulling in that virtual and digital community aspect, where it becomes more of a community, less a kind of an audio service, which I think a lot of the services have become. And that's when I think you get the magic of fans being able to connect with fans and fans with artists. So we would do meet and greets on Roblox, like glass animals we had at the Grammys in person. And then we also had a virtual Grammys with the virtual red carpet. And you could have a meet and greet with the glass animals. And like the fans would go up and like run up to them with their little avatar going, "Are you really glass animals?" And they go, "Yeah, we're the glass animals." And then they just freak out and take virtual kind of selfies that they would then post all over social media. And so for the fans, it was like as cool as meeting them in real life, which, by the way, they would never get to do. So it's this new way of mingling artists in a safe way with fans and giving them these money can't buy experiences that the majority of them would never ever get in real life anyway. So the artists love it because they can reach a much broader fan base. So obviously Nas, 40 million people. Going to concerts, you've been to concerts, I've been to concerts, but it's still quite a niche, exclusive thing, right? Because their tickets are expensive. Maybe they're not playing in your part of Australia or part of the world. So it's kind of a niche thing. So but if we use virtual events, artists love connecting with fans. So if this is a way that they can kind of supplement maybe more high cost in-person events that are super exclusive, and then supplementing reaching millions of people virtually for a lower cost, I think it's also a great way to extend artists' careers and connect with more people around the world and get their message across.
Yeah, and that's actually a great point, because people always, I've been talking to a lot of different people about the metaverse, and people are scared. But then when you use the example of concerts, for example, you've got artists who, like I'm going to Dua Lipa, for example, in a few weeks. So that's about 2,000 people in there. She could easily present to 200 million people in the metaverse if she wanted to, and people that wouldn't otherwise get the chance to experience her perform. So it does almost like democratize access to things, and I feel really excited from that perspective. Something else I think that's really interesting is in Web 2, I feel like the community is quite not isolated, but there's not a lot of commingling between people within communities. So I think music and sport are probably one of the few industries who actually encourage the fans to get together. They're at concerts together, there's fan clubs, they're at events. But say if you look at loyalty programs where you got memberships, you rarely actually get to meet other members within the community. So say if you're part of a frequent flyer club for an airline, you don't really get to meet other people within that space. So I do feel like Web3 is going to really transform that, because there's so much more conversation engagement, not only just between the community, but between the brand and the community as well. And there's going to be ways that, exactly like what you were saying, concerts in the metaverse, like you'll be able to connect with your fans in ways that have never been done before. Can you actually reveal some of, I don't know if you can, but some of the plans that you have for Napster for doing this? Because I feel that Napster moving into Web3 was such an interesting but really smart move.
up the PowerPoint of our plans for 2023. I'm kidding. I think you're just going back to the community. You're right. I mean, some of the companies I have on the side, one's called Tastemates and Tribalist. So I've been fascinated with the interest graph as a proxy, which are your icebreaker questions. So with Tastemates, you could do packs of your favorite movies and TV shows and restaurants and books, and that would connect you based on taste. So it's all about everyone wants to find their tribe or find their community, and music is such a natural proxy. You mentioned sports. I was on a panel with the Socios guy the other day. So I think my whole mantra in Web3 is the less, even using the word Web3, gives me tingles. Like so, I think the less a company uses jargon, the more successful it is. The more jargon, the less successful. So I think in the beginning of an industry, you need to have lighthouse examples that can point to actual talking about fans and artists and you see membership. Like I joined the Dua Lipa club and actually got a chance to hang out with her backstage, and I met other fans, and I got this exclusive cool Dua bit of merch, virtual merch, and it's like, oh, that makes sense. There's no jargon in that. So I think it's that's the step forward. I think the Web3 space, at least in music, if we're going into that area, last year gaming took a whopping, I think, like 4 billion in investment, and Web3 music took like 200-300 million. So there's been a massive disparity in investment in the space. This year gaming is meant to be 10 billion. And music will probably be around the same or less. It's been, I think, overlooked and underinvested in. And I think one thing it's been missing is kind of a brand that investors can trust. There's been a lot of 5 million investments and 7 million, like little kind of baby checking the box, but there hasn't been a material investment. So hopefully Napster can be that aggregating brand where people go, oh, this is a brand, paid billions of dollars to the music industry, been around for 20 years. It's going to be around for a long time. I'm somewhat of a bankable, hopefully, guy who's been around as a leader, and then we can bring in with Napster Ventures that we announced, bring in some companies in-house, kind of the best of breed, invest in more of the ecosystem. We announced a Web3 artist fund to kind of support the project, and collectively we can turn, because I had lunch with one of a Web3 music founder yesterday, and we're saying like all of us in the entire industry could probably fit in this room, right? So we just want to be an aggregating force to bring more money and attention and success to the area, to kind of progress it forward, because I think with the metaverse, which dovetailed over into gaming, into Web3, gaming has taken too much of the kind of voice and mind share. And I think music, if you think about millions of artists with thousands of fans, there are already brand connections, unlike games, where people are, our new game, and we're already $1 billion valuation, but no one has any affinity to that brand yet, because as everyone knows, it's very hard to create a new gaming brand. It could take 10 years, 28, Grand Theft Auto, 20 years, that I have an affinity to. So it's difficult to have affinity to these new brands. But on the music side, you've got millions of artists already with potentially millions of fans. So I think it's a much more natural opportunity to create a utility-based ecosystem around fandom from the music side, and not competing with gaming, but at least as good. So again, 4 billion and 10 billion, 300 million. So we just feel it needs to be course corrected a little bit, and music can have its time on stage, if you like, next year.
Pardon the pun. You're actually so right. I do feel that gaming has gotten a lot of attention in Web3, as you mentioned, and music has sort of like there are lots of little individual companies trying to tackle the problem, because obviously with Web2 platforms like Spotify, they just take so much of a cut, and we've been talking to different people who are trying to execute music initiatives or music companies in Web3, and they really want to focus on giving more back to the artist, because I can't even remember the exact stat, but we're talking to somebody and they were talking to a band who had some crazy high number of streams on Spotify. And there was 5 of them in the band. And at the end of the day, I think after all the cut was taken and everything, they were left with nothing, like pretty much no money at all. So they all had to have day jobs just because they needed to fund their lifestyle. Like they couldn't even live if they were just trying to make it through music. And I know that Steve Aoki, who's really heavily into Web3, he did some interviews saying he has to do these paid gigs because he just doesn't make enough money from his selling his music, which I thought was actually crazy. And I've actually heard that I think Web2 platforms have a bigger take than the mafia, which is even more crazy instead. So it's really great to hear that you've got that venture fund and you've got the artist fund. I really feel like it's going to make a huge impact on the industry, and you'll be able to help a lot of those companies accelerate the growth and giving back to artists. And I know that you're working with Algorand, so I think that's a really interesting and honestly what they're doing around being, I think, carbon negative. I think they're marketing themselves as the world's greenest blockchain. Can you tell me about like what it's like working with a company that's really pioneering that space too? Because I know that obviously you're going to be partnering on some really cool initiatives, but even what they're trying to achieve too, like you're both going into this space completely like there's no roadmap at all. So it's going to be really exciting to see what you guys work on together.
To take one step back, I think thinking about the opportunity. So after Roblox, when Facebook rebranded as Meta last year, kind of I was the crazy guy for a while going, the metaverse is coming, and like a few people cared, but not many. We went public, a few more people. But when I was speaking at this event with an artist in Lisbon, with Zara Larsson, just after Chris Cox from Facebook had announced the change to Meta, that kind of changed everything. And everyone wanted to have a metaverse strategy, public companies, private companies. So I think leaving Roblox, I felt we were set up nicely at Roblox. The formats were there. We kind of pushed it somewhat to the limits of what could be possible on a gaming platform with music. And I was looking at public opportunities, private opportunities. I think what really drew me, we're definitely in a recycle. We're in kind of a washing machine era of tech and media. Where the big companies are no longer the big growth companies. They're now kind of fighting for reinvention and positioning, brand challenges, etc. So that there was no obvious choice. Private companies, again, in the gaming space, I thought a lot of them were overvalued in terms of the revenue they delivered. So what drew me to Napster, obviously, was my old association with the brand. Two, I feel in a downturn, when you're building again, brand is everything. So to be able to have a dominant brand that you don't have to build is gold. But the other aspect was, apart from the great team we have at the company, it was the investors. So with Algorand and Hivemind, there are a lot of kind of deeper pocketed people. Maybe we haven't announced to it in the investor group. So it was like these TradFi, DeFi, crypto investors who are great, who I really got to know deeply over a number of months. And I think between Matt from Hivemind and Sean and Steve from Algorand, it was great hearing again, to your point, like their vision for what could be done, I think even upstream, right? So in order to lubricate the financial markets with institutional investors, everyone needed to have kind of a consumer example to point to. And everyone had been looking to gaming, but again, to our point earlier, music had been maybe overlooked. So the notion of Algorand being carbon negative, great for the music industry, high transaction volume, never been down, right? All these things. I was going, okay, well, that seems to be nicely aligned. And I think it was unusual 20 years ago, fans were definitely behind, disruption and Napster and some artists, but all the winds weren't necessarily blowing. So now you've got artists love it. Like every artist is wanting to chat to see what we can do together. And in Web3, labels are into it, majors, indies, and the whole Web3 community really needs a win, honestly, right? So we need a consumer success story, so that it's unusual that you get heavy hitters in Wall Street, these heavy hitters on the layer one side, all being aligned, going, yes, we must make this a success, and this is great. So so it's been great that they've been here in Singapore this week on the foundation team. So it's great getting to know them and hearing their vision. And that was another thing that brought me going. We got deep-pocketed investors who are smart, kind of leading the space with an alignment of value.
And you actually raise a good point, because we, as a community in Web3, definitely need a win, because we've taken a massive hit with the crypto crash. But I really do feel like it's now a time to lead and to build. And I feel like companies like yourself, or what Napster are doing.
Not necessarily. I think it's a transition period. So I think we're moving from an era of, I'm calling it the investor era, where a lot of it's like higher ARPU, in this sort of investor era, not necessarily prospecting. So a lot of the things even land in some of those companies, it's really still prospecting. So it's going off the NFTs and collectibles, 35 billion, nothing to sneeze at, amazing, right? In terms of value creation within a short period of time. And I think if I put a gun to your head and said, a lot of it has again been digital art and sports. So if I put a gun to your head and said, name 10 modern digital artists, you might die. But if I said name 10 music artists, everyone would live, right? So I still think in that, even in the collectible investor stage or whatever, there's still an opportunity for the music to take a bigger chunk of that 35 billion that it hasn't done. However, I think we're now transitioning into this kind of utility fan stage where we're talking not about technology and buzzwords, but we're just talking about businesses. So there's been, I think the Socios guys are making some good inroads in sport, where you're just talking about natural things. You talk about teams and membership and fandom, same thing with music. So I think that next phase where you've got millions of people transacting with, $5, $6, $2, $1, as opposed to like thousands of people with $1,000. I think that shift of people actually wanting to participate, doing things and getting rewarded, like social utility tokens, just feels much more organic for us to scale beyond that kind of first phase of investor-driven interest. So I think it's good. It's just a natural progression of the industry.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what you do. And you did raise a good point before about just getting rid of the jargon. And it's funny because we never called Web 2 until Web 3 came along. It was just like
I say exactly the same thing. I've been saying that the whole week. It's like this fictitious like rebranding to have a delineation between the old and new. And really, and honestly, in the music space, a lot of the streaming services are really Web 1, right? Because there's no, if we are being labelly, because there's not that community. It's not like social media and posting in Web 2. It really is almost just access, which is ironically more Web 1. So I think there's going to be a big shift where you bring in the community of Web 2, if you like, if we're calling it labeling again, and then you have these new opportunities for ownership and fan connection in Web 3. I think generally I just like to think about it as we're doing things better and we're innovating and we're focused around the fan. And I think that the creator economy is moving to the builder economy, which we saw as a microcosm on Roblox, where it wasn't individuals, it was groups of individuals. So from creator to builder. And if you think about Roblox and Squint, we had a currency called Robux. It wasn't blockchain based, but it could be. And that whole community of builders were all transacting in Robux, and they generally weren't cashing out. So it was effectively a social utility token in Web3 jargon, but just within the Roblox ecosystem. Fans would pay in fiat, they converted to Robux, everyone got paid, for doing the services or whatever in Robux. You would pay in advertising in Robux. So it was a great example and use case of an at-scale social utility token that was actually done properly. So I think a lot of the models, when we don't get so obsessed with metaverse and Web3 and on-chain and off-chain, I think there are examples already there. So now in obvious areas around entertainment and sports and any community of fans, I think we'll start to see businesses built where we'll just be talking about, I'm part of this club. And a little bit like with the Bored Apes. So all the ones that weren't brands that have now kind of become brands, what do they want to do? They all want to become part of my club and like do things and hang out together. So that notion of community, manufactured new with some of the new guys from the collectible space, already exists and has done for decades in areas like music, where there's already that connection and that kind of fabric that people can join together around common interest. So it hopefully, in terms of next year, the ambition for Napster is we bring in a few cool companies from the space to kind of change up the DNA, switch from 1.0 to 3.0 in terms of our DNA, and we're looking to probably raise a pretty good size round middle of next year, and then do some more kind of bringing together of the industry, if you like, and then start spending some proper dollars. So hopefully by this time next year, when we're talking, we can actually point. I don't like talking without tangible examples, but I'm literally starting like tomorrow officially work with it. So I think once we get going, hopefully we'll have a beat of every month. Here's a new partnership with an artist and a label, and here's this new club that's done, and here's this token, and so we'll have a bunch of things that we can talk about, actual use cases versus kind of hypotheticals. And then we're pretty confident, that it's appealing to fans because I've seen it happen before. We did tens of millions of dollars of virtual merchandise of just Little Nas backpacks and, which really have no old school tangible value, but they have value to the fans in this new kind of virtual digital world. So
can I just tell you, I just heard that term is called virch. And I'm like, I can't keep up with the terminology like virtual merch. I'm like, it's just crazy. And I think especially coming from, like, I'm a bit more old school. Like, I like investing in things that are tangible that I can hold in my hand. So it blows my mind that people are shifting from buying things online to buying online things that will never leave the internet. So it's, very...
Yeah, I mean, we came up with a term, I think, just shorter than virtual merchandise. And I think, but you think about how much time the community, that was the representation of of themselves as their avatar form. So you get out of bed and you've done your hair and you got your outfit on, right? You're representing now physically. They had all their different personas virtually, and they spent hours in some cases per day hanging out with their mates. And the same way, if I'm wearing my Napster t-shirt physically and walking around, I get feedback, and it's like, so same thing. If I got my Zara Larson t-shirt, my KSI hoodie, my Little Nas backpack or hat or whatever, 21 Pilots, that I'm representing my virtual self, which is again going back to that notion of the virtual meet and greet for this generation. My kid's first concert was Little Nas X on Roblox, which my daughter pointed out when she went to Ty Verdes, her first in-person concert, and met him. He's going, "Oh, so it's your first concert?" She goes, "No, my second. My first one was a virtual one on Roblox." So they don't see any delineation because they're spending, a good amount of time there and just feel more comfortable maybe than these our generation.
That is so interesting. So yeah, there's going to be a whole lot of people who just go, their first concert was in the metaverse or on Roblox, which is very, very cool. Well, just to finish up, I feel like I could talk to you forever, but I know you've got a plane to catch. So just to finish up, I did love this quote on your LinkedIn. Can you tell I've done like a really good deep dive into you? You said that you're fascinated by people, and more specifically what people want, people need, or don't know they need yet, which for me, I loved. And you might have missed your calling as, I don't know, like not a mind reader. I think you were saying like a behavioral economist, which I actually do feel like you'd be great at. But I come across this challenge all the time where people are like, Web3 is a scam, Web3 is a fad, like it's like nothing. Like, how do you convince those people? Because I feel like, in your new role, like you will unfortunately have a lot of those conversations. Like, what parting words do you have for those people who are just like, this isn't a thing, Web3 is nothing?
I think, again, it's moving from this investor era where, I think in anything new, there probably has been a bunch of interesting stuff that's gone on in the investor era. But in any sector, there's things that have, maybe not been done in the mainstream, but there's been success. So I think we're now transitioning and trying to get away from jargon. Again, talking to investors now, I'm coming with the kind of journalist skeptic mindset from the get-go. So I'm saying, look, I'm with you, and we should only be talking about new business opportunities. So like if we didn't talk about huge jargon when we were at Roblox. We just talked about there was this cool concert with Little Nas X and people made tens of millions of dollars. It's like, oh, that I understand, and here's what it looks like. So I think the more we can, as the industry now, start having examples to point to. There have been some good examples, like with smaller scale, but hopefully with Napster, we can bring people together to get larger scale and start talking in the hundreds of thousands and then the millions of participation and revenue. And then I think very quickly people go, oh, forget about the branding of, as you're saying, I agree, like Web 2 to Web 3, it doesn't matter. We're just doing new things to advance this industry or that industry. And I think at the core, we all want to connect as people. So the whole notion of being able to have more control as a creator of who you can connect with and have that direct relationship to monetize and fans with other fans. I think just that community angle is just so organic to who we are as people. It feels inevitable. So yeah. So we all have to work together to get by. Yeah, I think watch over the next couple of years and tangible examples, less jargon, and everyone just wants to connect and be part of clubs, whatever it is, and be with those people. So it should be fun.
Yeah, exciting times. I can't wait to see what you do at Napster. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I'm excited to catch up in the real world or the metaverse with James Blunt in new Napster merch, and we can all sing You're Beautiful together. But thank you so much for your time today, John.
Take it easy.